Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Time to Laugh. I'm excited to be doing another stream this morning. I've been looking forward to it all week because I'm going to dive back into a book that I started last week. So if you are new, welcome in. If you were returning, welcome back. Always feel free to drop into the chat and say hi, ask me questions, talk to me about stuff, give me your thoughts on what I'm reading. But you're also more than welcome to lurk and just watch, listen, all the things. So I'm diving back into the Chalet Next Door by Cassandra Joelle. Read out loud with permission from the author. I had reached out to her on Instagram to ask her if I could read one of her books out loud on my stream, and she so graciously said yes. So and she actually also sent me a free ebook of the book. So I was able to get it onto my Kindle, and that's what I've been reading on. And I got about 63 pages in last week, so I'm about 30%, 36% of the way through the book. At least that's what my Kindle tells me. And I've been really enjoying it so far. Basically, the premise is the girl main character, she is a book editor and she just needed a vacation. And so she booked a ski trip essentially. And she gets to the place that she's staying. There's a chalet. It's basically on the mountain, the ski resort. There's a huge snowstorm and she ends up getting, stuck essentially, and her the what am I trying to say? It's Monday morning, my brain is taking a second. Electricity, thank you, there's the word. Electricity goes out at her chalet. She ends up getting locked out by accident, and so she goes over to her neighbor's chalet and asks for help. And there's a whole bunch of things that are happening. Go back and watch my previous stream if you want to see all the details, because I want to get into the reading instead of trying to recap everything. But if I'm reading and you guys have questions, feel free to drop into the chat. I'll try to keep my eyes going there every once in a while just to see. But yeah, so I am going to dive right in. Let me just switch over to my reading format so that you guys can see the cover of the book and have the details here. And in the description, I'll put her website. It's just www.cassandrajoelle.com. And you can find her other books, the synopsis for all those books. You can find the links to buy them and then just learn more about her as well. So again, read out loud with permission by the author, which I am so grateful for. And yeah, so we're going to dive into part 2 of The Chalet Next Door by Cassandra Joelle. So I'm on chapter 5, page 63. Chapter 5, Presley. Powder for 2. As hard as I tried not to think of him, with every turn of my skis and as every flake of snow touched the tip of my nose, I thought of Ford. Keep your dignity, Presley. Do not fall for the brooding cowboy. My self-talk did not sway my thoughts, however, and unlike yesterday, I was happy to see the hours fly by. Come 2 in the afternoon, I decided to stop for a cup of hot cocoa. The chairlift brought me to a scenic diner at the top of the mountain called Ellie's. It was a cozy diner that smelled like cinnamon and espresso. They served every flavor of coffee and hot chocolate under the sun and had a line out the door. Thankfully, there were menus hanging from about every angle, so while I stood in line, I could mull over my options. Did I want a salted caramel hot chocolate or a white raspberry? As the line inched closer, I saw they also had baked goods galore. Checking my fitness tracker, I'd burned countless calories today shredding up the slope, so I decided I had earned an extra little something. Finally, it was my turn to order. May I have a salted caramel hot chocolate and an eggnog muffin? Just ordering it out loud made my mouth water. Coming right up, the barista smiled. She had long blonde hair and braids and a beanie that read Snow Bunny. A man came out from the kitchen and added a few more baked goods to the cooler. He was strikingly handsome, and I lost my train of thought when she gave me the total, signaling me to pay. Miss, I said it's $10.39. She smiled graciously, acting as if it wasn't out of the ordinary for him to make a woman's mind stop working. I quickly swiped my card and added a generous tip, pretending not to notice when he walked away. As she made my drink, I leaned over and asked her a question. What is it with the men here in Wyoming? Why are they all so handsome? Do you bake them from scratch up here? She giggled at my question. Don't I know it? It's their cowboy genes. Like genetics, I mean. Of course, it doesn't hurt how they look in a pair of Levi's either. She motioned to the man standing in the kitchen, who could now be seen through the window at the door. I would love to take him to church on Sunday, but he's a real quiet type. Can't tell if I'm driving him nuts or he's going to one day decide that I'm the one for him. I nodded, knowing all too well how she felt. As she handed me my drink and a little paper bag containing my muffin, I walked over to a table and sat down to eat it. My ski boots were firmly planted on the ground. Normally, I'd like to eat with one leg under the other, but this was forcing me to sit properly, and it was difficult to get comfortable, but I didn't have a hard time savoring the muffin. It was absolutely delicious. A little flyer on the table caught my eye as I was savoring the flavors. Baked goods are made in Maple Haven, Wyoming from the Pumpkin Perk Cafe, shipped frozen and baked fresh in our lodge. Maple Haven. Now that sounds like a cute place. Well, that was the longest I'd gone without thinking of Ford that day. Turned out all I needed was a constant stream of baked goods and sugar to keep my mind preoccupied. Getting up from the table, I took care of the garbage and headed back to the slopes. Warm and energetic from the sugar rush, I decided to go on a more challenging run. Usually I stuck to the intermediate groomers, the runs that the plows flatten out and don't have any hidden moguls that might have killed my knees. I'd been doing those the last 2 days, though, and I was ready for something that kept up with this new false sense of energy I had, and maybe it would keep my mind off of a certain someone. I took a chairlift for a run called Dill Pickle that said it was a black diamond. Usually those are for experts only, but according to the map, this one split off into 3 different blue runs, so I had adequate chances to abort the mission if need be. On the ride up, I was sitting next to a couple who were gently arguing. "I don't feel safe going down this slope, Jerry. Why don't I just ride the chairlift back down and meet you in the middle?" she said, to which he replied, "You can't ride the chairlift back down, dear. Only gondolas can be ridden both ways at Sage Mountain." Then she started to panic, as this one led to only black diamonds. I knew the feeling, having been very scared the first few expert runs I did years ago. "I'm sorry to interrupt," I said quietly, "but this run doesn't look that bad. If you'd like, I can go first and scope out the easiest route for you to take." She nodded. "I would love that, thank you, because Jerry here is too good of a skier to remember what an easy route looks like." She giggled, and I could feel the energy between them change. "Great, don't worry, even on the hardest mountains, there's always an easier way down." I didn't know where the words came from, but for today, it felt like God. As we rode the rest of the way in silence, I thought of the hard mountain I had been on this last year, that I had put myself on. I was self-isolating with workloads that were not sustainable. I had made huge life changes to stop seeking out dates, and while that brought me peace, it also made me feel incredibly lonely. And I hadn't taken any extra time for myself to reflect upon these things. Yet here I was on a vacation to work out these thoughts, and I found myself shacked up with my gorgeous cowboy neighbor. God, you really do have a sense of humor. Ain't that the truth? My goodness. After the chair dropped us off at the top, I saw the way down that was the easiest, but still a great challenge. I told her to follow my tracks, to which she did confidently. Her partner, Jerry, stayed by her side in solidarity. This black diamond was known for its steepness. I had to take a few breaks on the way down for how hard I was working to not fall forward, but the challenge to my muscles and skiing ability was welcomed. I enjoyed every moment of it, even when it felt unbearably hard. "Thank you, Lord, for skiing," I shouted as I tore through the powdery snow. He had blessed this mountain with an amazing amount of fresh moisture, so much that it knocked out the power of my chalet. Again, I laughed at the circumstances. As we all made it down to the first fork in the run, they had several options of easy diversions, including a long green cat track that circled around the whole mountain. It might have taken an extra hour to get down, but if you really needed to use it, you could have. "Hey, thank you. It was nice skiing with you. You're a really good skier." The woman who held her hand out to shake mine said. "It's Stella, by the way." "Nice to meet you, Stella. I'm Presley." Jerry put his arm around his lady. "Are you here visiting, or do you live here?" "I'm always looking for ladies to ski with. The local women's skiing group didn't gather this year, and it really put a damper on my progress." "I wish I lived here. I'm just up from Denver for the week." "Oh, you're here for the Winter Games? This place should be a madhouse right now, but the highway shut down. We totally lucked out with all this fresh pow to ourselves." "I haven't thought much about the Winter Games. Didn't even realize that I came on the same week as that," I grinned, not wanting to offend a local regarding my lack of knowledge for their largest event of the year. "Yeah, Jerry here is a huge fan of Theo McCain, the ski jumper." I nodded in recollection of the name. "Isn't he hosting the games?" "I think I heard that on the radio." "Yep, and Jerry is taking his Wheaties poster for him to sign. What a dork." Stella playfully punched him in the shoulder and giggled. "Well, maybe I'll see you around. Have a great rest of your stay here in Sage Mountain." We said our goodbyes, and I watched them ski away, opting for a blue groomer called Bigfoot. My legs were tired, and despite my afternoon sugary treat, my stomach was starting to growl. The chairlifts and gondolas in the distance started showing less people. Last chair was coming up quick. Instead of fighting to get one more run, I opted to ski down all the way to the bottom of this one instead. Skiing was usually a lot of time spent in prayer for me. I prayed for my safety, my clarity, my choices, and for those around me. I prayed in thanks for the fun experience. I loved being outdoors, and it was times like these that I realized how prohibitive my career was of that. The creative thoughts started flowing to me in the ways that I'd like to improve my life when I returned to Denver. Maybe I'd find an open-air office that I could work out of. No, that wouldn't work. Half the year it was cold. Maybe I'd take on less work? I liked the sound of that one. As I contemplated what I could do to have more of God's beautiful creation surrounding my everyday life, when I returned home, my thoughts went back to Ford. How would he and I end this arrangement? Would we exchange phone numbers, or would this just be one of those wild stories that I told 10 years from now about the week I spent in the Chalet Next Door? Oop! Title drop. I was reminded that the power could come back on at any minute. Wasn't that a good thing, though? It would probably have been for the best, before Ford got sick of me, before he thought I was too talkative, too inquisitive, too much. A pit formed in my stomach as I considered what would happen if he thought these things. And even if he didn't, I'd been so hurt by men I dated in the past, men who barely knew me at all but didn't hold back their harsh judgments of me because they felt threatened or put off by me. It changed the mechanics of how I acted around people. I no longer felt the freedom to be myself. As I made each turn, I considered in my head what God thought of this fear. I was a person with so much love to give. Why was I hiding behind past hurts and judgments? I always treated people with respect and kindness. Why didn't I instead lead with this love and God's grace? Starting today, no, right that moment, I was no longer going to tiptoe around people in my life in fear that they might not like who I was, Ford included. Go off, girlfriend. That's what you should do. Reaching the bottom of the slopes, I kicked off my skis when I ran out of skiable terrain and put them over my shoulder. My clunky ski boots had me walking robotically on the paved sidewalks that I realized now were heated. This was an expensive place, Sage Mountain. A lot of development had happened here just in the last few years since the private airport was put in. A fleeting thought crossed my mind. Could I ever afford to live in a place like this? Excitement rushed through my veins as I contemplated it. It wasn't that I didn't like Denver, but my workload was crushing my soul, and I didn't exactly have a place that I could just ski out when winter called. I was imagining what mountain biking was like here in the summer, as I'd heard they converted the ski runs into trails for bikes when I made it back to the chalet. Ford Chalet. Out of respect, I gave the door a gentle knock before entering the keypad. For all I knew, he could have been walking around without a shirt on and not expecting me. My cheeks went hot at the thought of it. Pull yourself together, Presley. Hello, Presley, Ford called out to me as I entered the chalet. He was fully dressed, thankfully, but his position on the couch with Priscilla on his lap was still bringing all the feels. The self-talk wasn't enough. I needed prayer, and I needed it as soon as possible. Hey, I replied back, delayed. How are you? I sat on the bench of his entryway, mudroom, and began unbuckling my ski boots. I'm tired, he said, with not a spark to be heard in his voice. He looked exhausted. Priscilla, on the other hand, looked absolutely full of it. I better take her out really quick, I said, as I took my first steps out of my ski boots. If my feet could scream for relief, they would. It felt so good to be out of them. She already went out. I got here about 20 minutes ago and took her out. On her leash. I couldn't figure out the boots, though. He looked at me for approval. I nodded, considering her paws must be absolutely frozen. They could get blistered from the cold, split, and hurt. I hurled towards her, hesitating, but she looked fine. She was wagging her tail, happy to see me, though she wasn't moving. Priscilla wanted to be with Ford. It took everything I had, but I patted her on the head and stepped back. Thank you for taking her out, Ford, I smiled, releasing my breath. I remembered the promise I had just made myself not long ago on the slopes, about being my true self that God created. So, here we go. What's for dinner? Ford had a confused look on his face for a moment, surprised by my question. I don't know. What would you like? I laughed at his response. I'm just teasing. I have all the food I need, and I'm more than happy to prepare something for the both of us again. I really enjoy cooking for others, I said. He smiled, quite possibly for the first time since I'd known him. Okay, he said, the words softly leaving his mouth. I hung up my ski jacket on his coat rack and walked to the kitchen, then analyzed what I could put together for dinner for two. If I used what I brought and some tortillas from his pantry and cheese from his fridge, I could just about make chicken enchiladas. Ford! I hollered, my voice carrying across the chalet to him in the living room. The open concept chalet didn't really warrant my hollering like that, but I felt excited to be sharing a meal with someone, and like Priscilla, I just felt happy. Full of it. And I felt freedom from worrying about how I was coming off while I led in what the Holy Spirit had empowered me with, an abundance of love. Oh, I love that. That's so cute. Thank you, Lord. After a moment, he didn't answer. I walked around the wall of the kitchen and saw that he had dozed off on the couch with Priscilla in his lap. She was looking at me with a look as if to say, "This one is mine." I smiled and shook my head. Priscilla had always been a silly little dog. As I shredded the cheese for the enchiladas, I remembered how she acted towards my dad when they met. She started twirling like a ballerina. She always liked men, which a friend told me was a great thing because some dogs are afraid of men. Ford was no different. Priscilla took an instant liking to him, and it was adorable. Hopefully when we get back into our chalet, she wouldn't miss him and start acting out. Wrapping the shredded chicken into the tortillas with some red sauce and cheese, the oven preheated. Out of the corner of my eye, in the quickly dimming light of the outside, flat snowflakes started to fall again. The cold air was starting to frost around the windows. With my phone being off these last few days, I had felt freer than I had in years, but I was starting to wonder what was happening in the outside world. Was the highway still shut down? Was there more snow on the way? As the enchiladas baked, I decided to dig through my bag for that pesky cell phone charger and reboot my phone for a few minutes to see what was happening. For all I knew, someone had been trying to get a hold of me. Likely they had, but I was content being disconnected for the time being. I made a plan as I found my charger that I wouldn't check my email. When I plugged my phone in, I decided I also wouldn't check my voicemail. I'd skim my text and send my mom one that I was here and having a great time. Then I'd check the weather and power off again. Once it came back on, it sounded like a 777 machine in Las Vegas with its dinging. Be strong, Presley. I blurred my eyes, pulling the phone out of focus as I tried to put on blinders to anything work-related. There was a slew of texts from my assistant Jenny, and the few words I skimmed while clearing the notifications said things like, launch a success and hope you're having fun. I was having fun, and despite my not wanting to see the texts, seeing them brought a freeing feeling to my body. I sent my mom a text about the beautiful location I was enjoying this week and checked the weather forecast. My jaw dropped. Weather forecasters say this storm is surpassing the totals they initially thought possible. Expect another 12 to 18 inches tonight with more on the way. Looks like the 2026 Winter Games this weekend will be one for the books. I looked out of my bedroom at Ford on the couch with his eyes still closed. He was completely still, and it looked like Priscilla had fallen asleep now too. I hated to wake him, but this news was kind of important, right? Ford, I whispered, trying to respectfully wake him. I put my hand on his shoulder to gently nudge him, and I was very intrigued at how muscular it felt. He opened his eyes slowly. Oh, I'm sorry, I must have fallen asleep on you. Ford rubbed his beautiful light green eyes. I went really hard today. That's okay, and I'm so sorry to wake you, but I finally got my phone on and, well, look at this, I said, handing him the phone so he could read it for himself. A smile crossed his face. That's fantastic, he said, as my eyes widened in disbelief. It is? What if the roads don't open back up and the spectators can't come? What if we get snowed in? What if all those things happen and the power doesn't come back on and I'm stuck here with you? I pleaded, pacing as I spoke. My mind was going rampant as I waited for his reply. He just shrugged. Things like this can always happen here in the mountains. That's why I have a generator. Less spectators means less distractions, and the camera crews came a few days ago as they are doing promos, so the show will go on. And I hate that I did it, but I gently stomped my foot at the rest of my unanswered questions. And I own all of the chalets. If you got stuck here for weeks on end, we have 9 other options to put you up when someone checks out, which is inevitable that they will. How, when the roads are closed, will someone check out? Where will they go? My mind was on overdrive. Part of me was spiraling into worry, while the other part was relieved that I had met the man who could at least host me while I was here. The private airport is open as far as I know. I saw a jet leaving this morning. There's always a way out, Presley. Was this a secret metaphor for him wanting me to leave? I wondered. But I didn't want to worry about how badly he wanted to get rid of me right now. This break was supposed to be relaxing, and right now I was acting crazy because I felt crazy anxious. I remembered my go-to Bible verse about not worrying about anything, and let the calm and peace of God wash over me. I'm sorry for overacting. I can get a little high-strung sometimes. You're fine, Ford said, looking down at his lap as if noticing for the first time that Priscilla had made her bed on his legs. Hi, he said, looking at her. She looked up at him and gave the tiniest little wag in reply. It melted my heart. The oven chimed, letting us know that dinner was ready. I skated to the kitchen in my thick woolly socks and opened the door of the oven. The delicious smells wafted through the chalet, and it was divine. I hope you like chicken enchiladas, I hollered, not waiting for a reply before I started plating them. Enchiladas were best served while piping hot, when the cheese was melted to near liquid form. Ford walked over, Priscilla not an inch from his feet as she kept up with him. I put out her food bowl that I'd prepared while I was cooking, and she excitedly went to it and started in. I left Ford's plate on the kitchen counter as he didn't choose to sit with me last time at the table, so I didn't want to smother him by forcing him to. But I was elated when he picked it up and followed me to the table where he sat across from me. Immediately, I jumped into prayer. Lord, we thank you for this food that will bring nourishment to our tired bodies. I thank you for never leaving or forsaking me, though I do not deserve your grace time after time, and for giving me the opportunity to meet Ford, who has been a perfect steward of charity to put us up. Please bless him, Lord, for his kindness. In your name, amen. I trailed off during prayer, but Ford's quiet amen was barely audible. He paused for a moment and slowly started moving his fork. This is awesome. Thank you, Presley, Ford beamed after taking a bite. I can't remember the last time I had enchiladas. Well, there's more where that came from then. I didn't know why I said that, but I rolled with it. I mean, I love to cook. That's what you said. He smiled, and it almost looked forced. The man was exhausted. Yes, I love to cook, and I haven't been able to cook for someone else in years, I said, immediately contemplating if that made me sound desperate. There I go again, worrying to death about what this man thought of me. Lord, help me out. Ford's opinion of me does not matter. I just want to be kind and respectful. I don't know that I like to cook, but I sure like to eat. Ford's serving was disappearing fast. I sipped the sparkling Italian soda I brought while he opted for water. As we ate and he got a heaping second serving, I noticed the sheer size of the table. Perfect for puzzling, and I just so happened to have brought a puzzle with me. Could you really take a ski trip in a sleepy, snowy village without putting together a jigsaw? Definitely not. I didn't think so. I also noticed how quiet it was here. I felt a twinge of nostalgia and craved some music. Pulling my phone out of my pocket, I opened my music app and scrolled until I found an aptly titled après-ski mix. The first song was soft and serene. You don't mind, do you? I motioned to the phone that played music while we ate. He shook his head. The song ended short, and the second song to come up sounded like it was playing at a rave. Oh my, I trailed off, shutting down the app. If that's the kind of music you like, head down to the base of the ski resort. There's a DJ there 5 days a week blasting that. He smirked as he finished his meal. No, I'm afraid not. I'm more into the oldies. Nothing from this century has won me over yet. I have a record collection at home. The way a record player fills a space with sound is just incredible. It might not be the crispest way to play a tune, but it sure feels the most right. Ford smiled. You'll like this then. He got up and slid his chair back into the table, taking his dish to the sink. I got up to follow him as he went into his office. He revealed inside a large built-in cabinet, a record player, and a small collection of records. Go ahead and play something from here if you'd like. I'm going to hit the shower. He left, heading upstairs to his room and shut the door behind him. Now we're talking. I started thumbing through the collection and was pleasantly surprised that we had music tastes in common. I wasn't far into his cabinet when I realized the man had more Elvis albums than I was even aware existed, and I loved Elvis. Kind of a chicken and the egg situation, considering my name and all, but I'd listened to him all my life. So had my mother, who passed on her love for his tunes to me with my namesake. I swiftly put his greatest hits record on and placed the needle at the beginning. As a delicious sound filled the room, I felt at home. By the time Ford returned downstairs, I was halfway through the album and I had a 1,000 puzzle piece scattered around half of his dining room table on the side that we hadn't been eating at. The dishes were already in the dishwasher and the counters had been wiped down. Priscilla was working on a Kong toy with a tablespoon of peanut butter inside as her prize. My hot tea was steeping a delicious peppermint scent, and I was having the time of my life. The song changed. My favorite Elvis song of all time came on, Unchained Melody. I stood. Do you want to dance? I asked Ford, who looked like I just asked him the secrets of the universe. Wow, she's getting bolder. Okay, so far, and part of the reason why I decided to read this one, because I read through the different synopsi, the different descriptions of her books on her website before I chose which one I wanted her to send me. And this one was the one that I chose. One, because I loved the ski vibe, but two, because I felt like I could relate to the character, because in the description it was talking about how she, felt like she was too much or whatever. And I can definitely relate to that because I've gone through a portion of my life just feeling like I was too much, like I was too loud, like I was too competitive, like I was all these different things, and have definitely grown out of that now, though sometimes it will come back every once in a while, just the thought. But I have grown so much in my confidence and also just in the way that I carry myself and who I know that I am. And so, yeah, it just is a journey that I can definitely relate to. And so I figured it would help me get into the book more, because when you can relate to the main character, it obviously helps. But yeah, love that. I feel like there was something else I was going to say. At the very least, the vibe that she is having right now with the music in the background, the record player doing a puzzle in a ski town sounds incredible. Okay, chapter 6, Ford. Tracks back to God. I lied when I told her I was going to shower. Really, I had that urge to pray again, and I didn't know how to say it. I didn't want to say it, because I felt like that would have opened a can of worms. This woman seemed to have a question for every question, and the answer for me was, I don't know. I didn't know how to pray anymore. I didn't know how to talk to God, or if he was even listening to me after all the wrongs I'd done. Tonight, at the table when Presley was praying over the food, I was almost moved to tears. I couldn't believe the words that came out of her mouth so easily about God not leaving or forsaking her, though. She didn't deserve his grace. How did she know that I needed to hear those things? Thoughts raced through my head as my heart longed for answers. So I went upstairs, and I got on my knees, which felt like a pretty good place to start, and I prayed. At least, I think I did. It was more of a hello to God and a long pause to see if he would answer. But in a way, I think he already had. Perhaps he was sending me signs through this woman. Maybe he was telling me to work on my patience, because if I was not, how could he extend patience to me? But I was noticing that this woman's questions, her humming, and the fact that she was now blasting some of my favorite songs through my house, none of that irritated me. In fact, I was enjoying the company. I'd been lonely, and that feeling had been exacerbated since I was so far from God. But according to Presley, I was not far at all. Okay, love this. I'm loving this. Oh my gosh. First of all, love that he is saying, he prayed, basically said hello to God, which prayer can look like so many different things. But then talking about, long pausing to see if God would answer. And again, prayer always looks different. And that can definitely happen where God will answer, or you'll get, the Holy Spirit will give you a word or a feeling or something in the moment. And it's always good to pause and let God speak to you. But I do think he's also true in this, that I think he can absolutely speak to you through other people, through nature, through the things that are happening in your life. And so I love that that's his way of kind of re-understanding and re-establishing that relationship with God. And also love that he said this at the end, that feeling had been exacerbated since I was so far from God. I think that's definitely something that it is almost kind of like she was saying with the Elvis thing. It's kind of a chicken and the egg thing, because sometimes when you're in that place where you feel far from God and things just seem to not be going right, sometimes it's hard to know if things are not going right because you're far from God. Not that he would make things go wrong, but, or if it's you feel far from God because things are going wrong. And so it's, kind of the chicken or the egg. I think either one can be true, and I think both can be true at the same time, to be honest. But I definitely think it's true that a lot of the times when you're feeling those feelings, lonely, depressed, sad, whatever it may be, discouraged, when you are far from God or just haven't been in that routine of talking to God constantly or reading your Bible consistently or anything like that, I do think those feelings can be exacerbated because the enemy is trying to keep you in that place, versus you can be experiencing those same thoughts or emotions, but if you're close to God at the same time, your whole perspective about it shifts, and you also remind yourself that you remind yourself of the truth, and you can, tell yourself and you can tell your spirit that, no, that's not, like, yes, it may be your reality right now. You're having those thoughts and feelings, but there is a truth, God's truth, that is more powerful than that. Anyways, my little soapbox for a second, but I just liked that part, so. In fact, I was enjoying the company. I'd been lonely, and that feeling had been exacerbated since I was so far from God. But according to Presley, I was not far at all. As I sat on my knees in a dark room with my eyes closed shut, I didn't let my mind wander. I wanted to focus as hard as I could on listening, which was something I had never been good at. It may have been the downfall to my last relationship, my lack of listening. I certainly wasn't good at picking up cues either. Poppy talked a lot, and after a while I just couldn't keep up with it all. My own thoughts became muddled with hers because she spoke every one of them, but would quiz me later on what she said. At first, I took it as a gentle nudge that I should listen and cherish her words. Her voice was like an angel singing, and I was the blessed one for being the recipient of such poetry that she spoke. Later on, the words became harder to interpret. She would say things like, so-and-so's boyfriend took her to Paris, or Tanya's husband listens to her. But all the flights in the world wouldn't have fixed things at that point. And I was absolutely clueless about that, because it was then and there that I booked us a trip where I was planning on asking her if she wanted to elope. I even ordered a custom wedding ring that couldn't be returned, which was delivered shortly after she left me. No, I'd never been good at listening, but God was, and I knew he was just waiting for me to speak, to repent, to turn from those ways that I'd already written off so long ago, to tell him about my plan for dating, that I would not pursue a relationship again that he had not ordained. I wanted to say these things. I had felt these words crawling around in my head and heart for the last several months. However, the words didn't come to me. I'm pausing to words are taking me a second. I'm pausing to highlight this. He says, Poppy talked a lot, and after a while, I just couldn't keep up with it all. My own thoughts became muddled with hers because she spoke every one of them, but would quiz me later on what she said. And I am going to ask my boyfriend about that because I am an external processor. So while I am more naturally introverted, I recharge by being alone. I love being around my closest people. So for example, my boyfriend, favorite person on the earth. Because I'm an external processor, I can talk a lot and I can just go and all my thoughts will be connected to each other and I can just talk and talk and talk and talk. And Sometimes I get self-conscious about it, which he always reminds me not to because he likes to listen to me. But I am curious if this would be true for him, where, as I'm talking and I'm saying so many things, if his thoughts that he has while I'm talking ever get kind of muddled up with what I'm saying. And so maybe that's sometimes why, not that because he's a great listener, but I'm just interested to see if that's ever true for him, I guess, is my question to him. Let's see. Okay. I wanted to say these things. I had felt these words crawling around in my head and heart for the last several months. However, the words didn't come to me. After a long while, I got up and decided to shower since I was already up here. While I was in the shower with the hot water beating down on my face and cold skin, the tune of the music blaring in the background, I called out to God, Lord, please forgive me. Come back to me, God. Show me the ways that a godly man should live and straighten my paths that I may follow you. And I wept for the first time since my mother died all those years ago. Wow. First of all, shower is often a good place to pray and talk to God. Second of all, what a prayer. What a first prayer after a long time. And there is something about the presence of God, something about that connection that just will release emotions in you sometimes. And I love it. It's so freeing, to be honest. I can't decide where to put this. I've been trying to put my, what's this called? I've been trying to put my microphone more like actually right in front of my face because I had it a little bit farther away when I was first streaming, but I feel like it makes more sense to have it close, especially because I'm reading out loud right now, so I have it right in front of my face. Hopefully it's not too loud, but hopefully you guys can adjust. But because it's more right in front of my face, I'm trying to figure out a good place to have my Kindle, but I will just move it around. As I ambled down the stairs of my chalet that evening, I was in my head talking to God with every step. I felt relief. A weight I had been carrying for so long was lifted from my shoulders. Guilt was gone. Shame was gone. Joy was returning. Come on, somebody. The song that was playing on the record player was a catchy tune, and I automatically started humming to the music as I walked over to my magnificent picture window. I felt myself bursting with thankfulness for everything I had. God's grace abounded in my life, despite my not deserving it. Turning, I saw Presley at the table putting together a jigsaw puzzle in her leggings and ski shirt. I looked at her from where I stood before she acknowledged me, as she was lost in her puzzle. She was a beautiful woman, probably about my age. I didn't know much about her, but I thought back to my promise I made about women. I found myself saying another prayer in my mind to tell God about that promise. I would be as respectful of God's boundaries as I was with Presley. Despite this forced proximity, I would honor the Lord with my actions and words. As if on cue, Presley spoke. As she held her hand out to me with the invitation to dance, I was stunned. What kind of gentleman turns down a lady's offer to dance with her? After contemplating this for a moment and hearing the tune, which was possibly my favorite Elvis song of all time, I accepted. Presley walked over to me, and I met her in the middle of the living room. She shook my left hand in her right, and She took my left hand in her right, and I carefully placed my other hand on her upper back. There was more than enough room in between us, and after swaying for a moment, she looked up at me and smiled. I didn't realize it until now just how much shorter than me Presley was. I was around 6'1", and Presley must have been 10 inches shorter than me. I never stood close enough to her until just now to notice. Feeling my body relax, and with the realization that I didn't want to do anything that might dishonor God, I released the breath I was holding in. This was just dancing. Until it wasn't, and I would make sure that it didn't go beyond this. Make sure it doesn't, Lord. I let go of my hand on her back and held her out with my one hand, and she did a spin. It was then that I remembered that this cowboy loved to dance. Come on! There is something about two people dancing in a living room, in a kitchen, or whatever, with light music, or even no music, that is just, I find it so romantic. I think it's the best. Part of it is probably because I love to dance. But I just think it's really romantic. It's so cute. Okay. Let's see. 2 twirls and a dip later, I felt the plot thicken between us. As the song ended, she thanked me for the dance, and I found myself filled with gratitude that she asked me. It was enjoyable, and with my boundaries in place, nothing else happened. She was full of laughter and went back to the dining room table. I followed and picked up the box of the puzzle to see what she was creating. A snowy ski slope landscape with this little glitter accents. It glows in the dark, too, she said with a coy smile. Her eyes looking up at me from the table made a twinge in my chest. Presley was radiant. That was obvious to anyone who glanced her way, but I was just now noticing to the degree, oh my gosh. I don't know if it's the sentence structure for some of these or if it's just the fact that I'm reading fast or if it's my brain, but I've been stumbling over my sentences recently. Okay, sorry, Presley was radiant. That was obvious to anyone who glanced her way, but I was just now noticing to the degree that she was. Very cool. Mind if I join? I don't think I've done a puzzle since I was a kid. My grandmother used to have them going on a card table permanently set up in her living room, right next to that bowl of strawberry candy. Yes! Oh my gosh, the strawberry candy. You guys, that was, okay, so my grandparents, when I was a kid, there was always some staples. One of them was that strawberry candy. My grandma always had a little bowl next to the fridge that was by the door. The other was, I swear it was circus peanuts. My oldest sister loved circus peanuts, and her and my grandpa would always bond over their love for circus peanuts. I would eat them just because I had a sweet tooth, but I didn't necessarily love them. So, but yeah, anyways, that just reminded me of the staples. And then my other grandma, that when we were in our first house when I was younger, lived across the street from us, and she always had soda, which was a treat for us because we never had it in our house. And then she always had 100 grands. That was the candy bar that she always had a stock of. And when I tell you, I forgot about 100 grands for a while as I was growing up, but as an adult, if anybody asks me what my favorite candy bar is, 100 grands is my answer immediately. I think they're so good. Some people haven't even heard of them, and I think they're missing out because they are so good. Okay. My grandmother used to have them going on a card table permanently set up in her living room, right next to that bowl of strawberry candy. As I reminisced aloud, Presley chimed in. I love that candy. I buy it sometimes, she laughed. You can buy it? I've never seen it in stores, I said, confused. Well, it's not delivered by the stork the day someone becomes a grandmother. Of course you can buy it, silly, she teased and tossed a puzzle piece at my head. I was so caught off guard at her playfulness, I didn't even know what to say. So I flicked one back at her, and it poked her in the eye. Oh my, I'm so sorry, Presley. I didn't mean to, I stammered, and she started laughing. Good shot, Ford. I'll remember that next time I shouldn't go easy on you. Careful, though. I can be ruthless with a piece of sticky bubblegum in a slingshot. She giggled, taking a sip of her tea as she started to slowly put the pieces together. I love this because I feel like she's actually being herself now, and she's so bubbly and fun. Ah, that's so cute. So, I started, not knowing how to finish the sentence. Tell me about something. Tell me about you. It was as good a start as any. She looked surprised at my conversation, and I was certain it was because I was certain it was because I'd been such a silent dud around her these last few days. I'm a book publisher in Denver, and I'm here because I just about snapped at work. Well, I think I had a meltdown right before work, but it was a prolonged reaction. I'd been very overworked and under-vacationed in the last 5 years. Presley didn't waste any time jumping right into her story that she shared so easily. The woman was transparent, and I wasn't sure how to handle that. I'd never been around a woman who told me what she was thinking instead of saying something different and making me guess. Oof. Well, refreshing. As she went on, I found myself captivated with what she had to say, and I also started to realize I'd been trying to maintain control of every situation, when in fact my life had been in God's hands all along. Wasn't that the very thing I just prayed for? I crammed to the limits in college so I could graduate early, and I went right to work. No gap year, no time off. A nervous breakdown was inevitable at some point, and I happened to have it this week. She gave a smile with her thumbs in the air, and I laughed. So that's how I ended up here for a week, in Sage Mountain, during a power outage and a major incoming storm. I can't wait to see what lesson this turns out to be, because God really does have a sense of humor. That he does, I said, as I watched her animated expressions while she spoke. She certainly had my full attention. She was entertaining as all get out. A little noise came from Priscilla, and Presley jumped up. Did you finish that already? She asked, getting down on the ground to check out her dog's toy. I filled this with the tiniest bit of peanut butter. Kept her entertained for at least an hour. Presley exclaimed. The dog looked dang proud of herself as she licked her little lips clean. Cute, I said, surprising myself. Cute? I know I had prayed to be a changed man, but did I really just say that out loud? God, have you softened me up that much already? Looking at the dog, Priscilla, I couldn't deny that she was adorable. This evening, she was sporting a purple sweater and had 2 matching bows in her hair. Presley must have changed her outfit from earlier because I didn't remember it. Or maybe I was just too self-absorbed to notice. Probably the latter. Presley brought over a fluffy dog bed for Priscilla to sit in while she returned to the puzzle, but instead the dog went and got a drink at the tiniest little dog bowl I'd ever seen next to the kitchen island. It was so small I didn't think I would have noticed it otherwise, probably the size of my palm. As she got what sounded like a much-needed drink, the record started winding down. If I recalled correctly, there were maybe 3 songs left before it needed to be flipped. It was already dark outside and the day was catching up to me. I decided at the end of this record I would go to bed. "Now, tell me about you, Ford," Presley smiled. "Well, there's not much to tell you that you probably don't already know," I said, considering she'd been my roommate for 2 days. "Try me." "Let's see. I'm a ski drawer. Been doing that since I was about 9 years old." She nodded, signaling that she wanted more. "I won a national championship a few years ago, and that's what qualified me for the Winter Games. Now I'm just competing in those pretty much. With brand deals, I stay pretty busy, which is awesome." I was quickly running out of material to give her. A sliver of doubt made me wonder if she had already looked me up online and knew about Poppy and the shameful breakup. I shook that thought from my mind, reminding myself that the devil wanted me to feel shame and doubt, not God. Yes! Remind yourself. That's so good. I love that. "What about you? What else do you like to do?" "Skiing, of course." As she pressed, I started to think outside of ski drawing. It's a hard question to answer because ski drawing is the thing that has all but consumed every inch of my life for the last decade. Kind of like how you said about publishing. Her eyes widened. "Thank you for sharing and listening to me," she said. It wasn't lost on me how low the bar was set for this woman, but I was one of the worst offenders for not listening, so I just nodded. It was clear that we both had been through some rough experiences with the opposite sex, and I'd leave it at that if she did. I totally get it. I always wanted so much more in life, but the success of my career trumped it. I no longer had time for anything that wasn't publishing. Sometimes I think I'd trade it all for a family, she said, hiding behind her words as she pretended to analyze the puzzle box. Little did she know I felt her pain. In the next room, my computer let out a familiar chime. "Excuse me, I didn't realize the computer was still on. It does this annoying thing whenever I get an email," I joked and walked to the office. Pulling up a browser, I checked my messages. The property management company I used had replied to my previous email about Presley's chalet. Bad news was that they wouldn't be able to fix that fireplace issue so easily. It was going to have to be a project for late spring when contractors could come up and fix things properly. The good news was that they had an opening for a no-show in Chalet number 5. The guests couldn't make it due to the roads being closed down. I read the email with a mixed bag of emotions. This is a fork in the road because he knows this information, she doesn't. So the question is, does he tell her and let her move into the chalet and out of his, or does he not tell her and keep her in the chalet with him? Interesting, we will see. I read the email with a mixed bag of emotions. The woman I was hosting here in my home had somewhere else to go. Surely they were going to reach out to her next and let her know. How would she react? Would she be anxious to leave to get away from me? Or for some reason... Sorry. Didn't say or. For some reason, I wanted her to stay here with me. I wasn't proud of it, but for a moment I contemplated simply omitting the fact that there was another option for her lodging. Jesus, help me. Not telling her would be slimy and a hostage situation. All I could do was come clean, and that's exactly what I'd do. Returning to the table that was now covered with a nearly completed puzzle board, I spilled the beans. That was a property management company. There is nothing they can do about your chalet. It will require much more extensive repairs, unfortunately. But chalet number 5 is open because the guests couldn't get here. Though the power might be out, it does have a working fireplace if you'd like to have your own space again. The look on her face was familiar. While I'd never been a good interpreter, I sensed that she wanted to know what I wanted out of the situation, so I added something in. "Of course, I think it's fun having you here if you'd like to stay, with electricity and all that." She smiled and nodded. Okay, sorry. Let me keep... Okay, sorry. Okay, I need to relax. I was trying to decide just then if I wanted to say the thought that came to my head just then, or if I wanted to keep reading and get to a place that felt like more of a complete thought. And then I just got into a spiral of apologizing for whatever. But I don't need to do that because this is my stream and we're having fun. Anyways, this is refreshing because I understand that the miscommunication can be entertaining. I understand that it can be a good way to have a conflict in a book. I understand that it's also very realistic because a lot of people will lie or omit things or just miscommunicate. But this is very refreshing because it's still been engaging And the fact that he told her, I just feel like a lot of books wouldn't do that. And I'm obviously sure there's going to be a conflict or there's going to be something that comes up. But the fact that the miscommunication and him lying to her in this scenario isn't going to be it makes me very happy. And I also love the fact that he was observant enough to see her facial expression, realize that she probably wanted his thoughts on it, and just shared his thoughts. Of course, I think it's fun having you here if you'd like to stay, with electricity and all that. She smiled and nodded. Yeah, if it's no problem, I don't think I want to be walking around with a flashlight. Unless the power turns back on, of course. Presley nodded to herself. Of course, I said back, though I found myself praying that it wouldn't. Almost everywhere in Sage Mountain had generators. The fact that my brand new chalets were lacking them was almost a little embarrassing. I was just glad I had thought to get mine installed before moving in. But as long as the ski resort could stay open for all this fresh snow, I didn't care. I had enough diesel reserves to run the generator for a month if it came down to it. That's a lot of diesel. As I lingered in the chalet, wondering if I should join her back at the table or remove myself from the room altogether, a foreign noise came from the back bedroom. Presley's room. Presley heard it too as she stood up and paused. What was that? She asked. We were both on high alert as we walked to the room. At first, nothing seemed out of place. Her bed was made so well the sheets had to have been ironed. None of her things were out except for her phone charging on the nightstand. The room smelled like a bouquet of flowers, which must have been Presley's perfume. I would have known if I had stood that close to her, but I didn't plan on it any time soon because of boundaries. But then I took one step inside. The window is broken, Presley called out, pointing to a large crack in the glass. Do you have any duct tape? The window was so large that I didn't think the tape could fix it, but I didn't want to discourage her idea either, something that an hour ago I wouldn't have considered. I think I have a roll in my garage. Let me go check, I said, tearing out of the chalet. What on earth could have broken that window? I decided to take a quick trek around the chalet to see if I could see anything out of the ordinary, but first I needed a flashlight. My garage had a lot of random things in it. Some of the remaining construction materials from all the chalets had been stored here, hence why I didn't park in it yet. I needed time to go through it and see what was what. Miraculously, I found a large yellow flashlight sitting right next to a fresh roll of duct tape. Thank you, Lord. The praise came to me so naturally I didn't think about it. Joy, through this hiccup, was possible. I left the garage to do a quick perimeter search around the building before going back inside. All the chalets were 3 stories. You had your garage at the street level, the front door up, some heated concrete steps, so no slipping on ice, and then inside there was an upstairs loft. I loved the design because I could see more mountain peaks and chairlifts that way. I could tell if some of my favorite runs were groomed without pulling it up on the internet, but right now in the dark with the chalet towering above me, I found the design adding difficulty to determining what exactly went wrong here. Then I saw it. A tree branch had broken from the snowfall and was waving in the window, hitting the chalet with every breeze. I surmised a large gush pushed it hard into the chalet. Since it was still attached and could fall at any moment, and I was standing under it, I hightailed it out of there and went back inside, while my boot prints were filling back up with powder as soon as I made them. It's that tree branch right there. I pointed it out the window, holding the flashlight so Press could see it outside. Oh no, I hope it doesn't hit the window again. Do you think there's anyone who can come fix that tonight, so it doesn't? A loud crack sounded as the branch swung back at the chalet, making us both jump. Presley screamed, and her body fell into mine in fear. For a moment, we were in an embrace. I stiffened, knowing that temptation was real. She whispered an apology and took a few steps away. I paused, but I didn't want to make a big deal out of it, so I answered her question. I'm really not sure, but the snow is still falling. I doubt I could get an emergency tree trimmer tonight. If only I had a forklift, I could fix the thing by myself. I thought about Presley in this room with that tree tonight. Even after we taped the windows, the cold air was still seeping through. You can take my bedroom until we get this fixed properly. I'll take the couch, I said, walking out of the room. As if on cue, Priscilla jumped up on the couch and started wagging her tail. Someone has already got my spot warmed up. You don't have to do that, Ford. I'm already staying here taking up your space in your chalet. I'll take the couch. Priscilla wants to sleep on it anyway. She's making that clear. We both smirked at how she was acting as she ran around the couch cushions and sporadically began digging on the blanket. I insist. I'd rather stay down here to monitor if the window gets hit again. Presley looked like she was weighing her options. Her comment about taking up space didn't sit well with me. Okay, if you promise you don't mind. I shook my head, going to the linen closet off the laundry room to grab some fresh sheets and pillowcases. Presley had set her luggage at the end of the stairs, so I brought it up with me. By the time I made it upstairs to strip the bed, Presley had taken another bag up there and was putting her beauty products under my sink. A bark from the bottom of the stairs got her attention. Priscilla hates stairs. She tripped on one when she was a puppy and has held a grudge ever since, she said. My back was turned to Presley and I felt a smile coming on. Who would have thought that Shih Tzus were so entertaining? After the sheets were changed, I went back downstairs to where Presley was back at the table with her dog on her lap. I thought I'd work on this a few more minutes before bed. Want to join me? Every part of my being was ready to go to sleep, but there we were in my makeshift bedroom for the night. I didn't want to be rude to my guest, so I walked over to the table and sat down. Presley had quite a bit of the puzzle in progress already. This helps me unwind and think a little clearer before I go to sleep. Usually I read before bed, but I've sworn off anything that isn't the Bible for this week. She smiled and looked at me, waiting for me to jump into the conversation. You must pay for every word that comes out of my mouth, huh? What do you mean? I shook my head in confusion. I mean, you don't say much. That's okay, because I say a lot. She shrugged her shoulders. It's their loss, Presley. I couldn't stop the words coming out of my mouth if I tried. It sounds like the men you've dated have been real jerks. Her jaw dropped and eyebrows raised. I mean, that's what I was leaning towards too, but thank you for saying that, she said. We sat in silence for a few minutes, and I finally found the correct puzzle piece to fit into the perimeter. Good job, Ford, she said, getting up and pushing her chair into the table, Priscilla in her arm. Well, thanks for the chat. Good night. As she turned, I watched her walk up the stairs and into my bedroom. That night, I took a top sheet and threw it over the couch. Using an extra comforter to keep warm, I dozed off quickly and only awoke to the sound of a tree branch tapping the window in the guest bedroom. Presley's room. I got up a few times to make sure the glass was secure, but thanks to the tape, it appeared it was going to hold. There wasn't much of a draft coming in, despite the hasty tape job, which was a relief. As I paced back to the living room, I considered what could happen if the chalet got too cold, or if the generator went out. I threw a couple logs in my wood-burning fireplace and watched the fire tear through the fire starters and then into the logs. The popping noises and familiar scent brought back memories of my childhood on a ranch in southern Wyoming. I used to go out on cattle drives with my dad and his ranching buddies in the summer. The cows had to be moved to places where they could have fresh land to graze. It took several days to do so, as it required them walking to where we needed them to go. We didn't have the means to transport them like some of the other fancy ranches around. So sometimes it required sleeping in the middle of a large pasture out in the middle of nowhere. I secretly loved being out in the wilderness sleeping, though my dad always complained about it. His back would hurt from sleeping on the ground, even if he brought a 3-inch thick piece of memory foam out with us. And he'd miss my mother's cooking and long to be away from food that came in a can. But I loved it. I always wanted to show him my fire-building skills, how I could ride on the horse like him and his friends just as well, or that I perfected the art of cooking a hot dog over a fire. He never seemed to care. I wondered if Clint had been the one showing him all these things, would he have felt differently? But Clint was always back home overseeing the ranch, irrigating, digging ditches, or mending fences. Even when I got caught by a tree branch while on a runaway horse as a kid, giving me a permanent deep scar on my jawline, I didn't think he noticed. I'd never forget that day he grudgingly took me to the emergency room. They gave me 15 crude stitches, making X marks all down it. As it healed, I wasn't allowed to play outside because they didn't want the bills that would follow if it became infected. In my hurt, I felt like a burden to them. Now in my adulthood, I realized I had never connected on an emotional level with my family, and that was difficult for a child to experience. Especially when my older brother Clint was the golden child. Did they even want children? I wondered that, but their reaction to my brother's every waking breath said otherwise. What they did want was help around their farm, and society had certain expectations of people, or at least they did back then. I'd like to have believed that they tried their best or did what they could, but I wasn't sure what they were capable of because they never showed me. As I lay listening to the fire crackle, its warmth spreading throughout my body, I realized I'd been holding a grudge against my brother for receiving what I didn't, because I didn't receive the love I had wanted. Now I wasn't forgiving him for it. Lord, I need your help to forgive. Within seconds of my prayer, I was fast asleep once again. When morning came, I was awake at dawn. The soft glow of the sun was reflecting light off of all the new snow that came overnight. It was touchingly beautiful, and I had the urge to call my brother for the first time in years. God, is this forgiveness? If only my phone wasn't broken. I went to my computer and quickly typed up a request to my manager, Jack, and asked if he could have a new one sent to me when the roads opened. Then, I went to freshen up in the guest bathroom. I had brought my toothbrush and toothpaste down here last night, but I had forgotten my razor and shaving cream. I felt my stubble. It was already unruly. I wasn't the type of man who had a 5 o'clock shadow the same day, but my facial hair seemed to always be present in the mornings. Changing into my ski clothes, I decided I'd spend one more day on the slopes before the winter games. Originally, I thought about just using today as a rest and recharge day, but sitting around all day long inside did nothing but bring me anxiety and worry. I'd been learning that about myself over the years. Idle hands give the enemy too much time to work with. At least for me. While I wasn't running from reality, in fact, I had my best thoughts while doing tasks. I couldn't stay here. Love that. In the laundry room, I slipped on my ski pants over my long johns. The Henley long-sleeve shirt I wore felt like it shrunk in the dryer. I made a mental note to get another one ordered soon. A door opened upstairs, followed by Presley carrying her dog down. "Good morning," she said, her eyes looking fresh and bright. Priscilla was in a bright pink sweater as Presley stopped to put a coat and boots on them both before going outside. "How did you sleep?" I asked, out of character for myself. Or was it? We slept great, thanks for asking. The heat from the fire just lulled us to sleep like angels. And you? I'm sorry you had to give up your nice bed for the couch. It was fine. I liked it. And I'm happy to report the window didn't get hit again. Yet, anyway, I said. She smiled. Oh, thank goodness. I kept thinking I heard something creaking out there. I know I've been here for a few days, so you'd think I'd be used to all the sounds of Sage Mountain, but I still wake up and wonder where I am. That's probably because you slept in a different bed every night you've been here. I crossed my arms and gave her a knowing look. You're so right about that. She tapped her forehead as if to say, duh. Presley looked me up and down. So, training again today? I shook my head. Nah, it's all done. I prepared all that I can for the Winter Games. Today I wasn't planning on it, but I've decided to go skiing again. Ah, so there will be a tiger on the slopes today. Presley laughed, and I nodded. It's the only way I can be left alone. I looked at her. Her hair was in a braid going down her shoulder blades, and she was wearing her ski clothes and a fitted black turtleneck. I didn't know makeup well, but I could tell she was wearing a pink lip gloss. I found myself thinking of her lips. Ford, get a grip. It was hardly 7 a.m. I bet it gets crazy with people recognizing you all the time. How long has that been happening? She asked. I thought about it for a moment. Probably the last 5 years or so. Things really exploded again when I was in a high-profile relationship with my ex. Just bringing Poppy up made me feel weird, but God had forgiven me, and I had been freed from the shame and grief of that time in my life. I see. Well, I'm glad you have such a good disguise. It certainly worked for you when we were in the gondola when that woman was fawning over you, and no one was the wiser. I waited for the question about my ex to come, but they didn't. I knew she wanted to ask because, in my experience, every woman wants to know the details of past relationships, but it dawned on me, Presley wasn't interested in me like that, and that was okay. Not to sound full of myself, or like I assumed she would be, but I'd always been a little bit of a ladies' man. But since Poppy, I'd turned into a private recluse who steered clear of any and all women. It had been a relatively long stretch that I hadn't even considered the idea of talking to a woman beyond friendship, and suddenly here I was, toying with the idea if this woman liked me. The classic. It's always when you're not looking that they come. Okay, Chapter 7. Presley. The Tiger Unmasked. I slept well in Ford's comfortable bed. He had one of those firm mattresses with a cooling pillow top on it. If it wasn't for waking at every little movement downstairs from him or his fireplace, I would have been out like a light. But the truth was, my awareness of Ford was growing quickly. Last night, I even prayed about it. Lord, what is happening here? I asked. Either God was working through me to reach Ford, or Ford was starting to reach me, and that was both terrifying and exciting at the same time. I still knew very little about Ford, other than the fact that he was drop-dead handsome, of course, and turned out a great dancer. I had my guard up pretty strong last night, but there was a moment when he dipped me, I felt something in my heart. My feelings for him were solidified in a way. Seeing him up close, yet out of the kissing distance, my heart was fawning over him. I respected how gentlemanly he was being, and hoped it was because he was starting to like me. So, with my phone back and charged, I did a few web searches of him last night. I watched race videos, interviews, saw pictures, and then I read the bios of the people who were in or had been previously involved in his life, including his ex-fiancée, Poppy. Before I knew it, I was in one of those message boards that was dedicated to him. It was made up of mostly women who thought he was gorgeous, but some fans of his ski joring too. One of the posts caught my attention. Ford's ex-fiancée gets married to Sage Mountain CEO. Suddenly, I felt like I was reading something I shouldn't. It was too personal and almost creepy to be learning this much about a person who was just right downstairs. If only I could have asked him. He may not have seemed like an open book right now, but for the time being, he had graciously allowed me to be his roommate. Heck, I was even using his bedroom, and he was on the couch. My convictions led me to put the phone down. This person was showing me boundless kindness by allowing me and my high-maintenance Shih Tzu Priscilla, who was acting as if he was the only man she'd ever seen, stay with him. The least I could have done was stop reading about his deeply personal wounds online. Love that. We love a mature person. After I turned it off and went to sleep, I awoke this morning and started to think of Ford in a different light. There was more to this brooding exterior than what met the eye, I was certain of it. Remembering a video where he and Poppy were being interviewed at a sporting event, he seemed so doting, caring, and kind. Now, I picked up on those things, but also a deep hesitation. Last night, as I fell asleep, I said another prayer about Ford, that he could forgive those who hurt him, and that maybe he could find someone who would protect his heart at all costs. As I did my hair and brushed my teeth for the day before going downstairs with Priscilla, I considered all of this praying I'd been doing for Ford. My heart sank. Lord, I'm afraid I've been starting to fall for this man, and I don't want to do that again unless it's for the man I'm going to marry. Lord, turn these feelings off. Please don't let me get hurt. A calm feeling came over me as I put on a light-tinted moisturizer and found myself taking a little extra time for a sparkle shadow on my lids and a minor eyebrow shaping. I looked to the bed where Priscilla was still snoring. She wasn't waiting on me. I had plenty of time to take care of myself before the lift started running. I braided my hair and decided a little lip gloss wouldn't hurt either. It might just help protect my lips from getting chapped. After several minutes, I put down the makeup and woke up Priscilla. She rolled on her back so I could scratch her tummy, which I happily obliged. Then, when she was ready, she rolled back over and let me put a sweater on her. Today, I chose a bright pink frock with small matching hair clips for her pigtails. It was so adorable that I picked her up and kissed her on the head out of joy. Thank you, God, for dogs. They bring so much happiness to our lives. As we headed downstairs, I nearly stopped in my tracks when I saw Ford. He was wearing a skin-tight, long-sleeved Henley, and I wasn't mad about it. His muscles appeared to be very well defined, no doubt thanks to his sport and that gym he had set up in his third bedroom. We had some idle morning chat as I prepared to take Priscilla outside, and when I returned, it continued some more. I noticed he seemed much more talkative as the days went by. Was he opening up to me, perhaps? Before I knew it, Poppy came up in conversation, and my mind was fending off the guilt from already knowing about it. I didn't press, though he left plenty of opportunity to ask questions, and I thought maybe that made me appear like a cool chick that wasn't overbearing with questions. But in reality, my mind had tons of them. Overbearing was my nickname in college from a guy named Ben, who went out with me a total of 2 times after he brought up a woman that he wanted to ask out on a date, and I mentioned the fact that he was already on a date with me. He said, I didn't realize that meant we were married, to which I objected that we would in fact never be. That was hurtful. Another nickname was Spreadsheet, after I made a few for my chemistry lab partner in high school so he could keep our projects organized. Despite him telling me that was the only way he passed that class and graduated because he was on very thin ice academically, he coined the term, and it caught on with all of his football buddy friends. So now, as I was looking around for a pen so that I could cover the contents of Ford's refrigerator in sticky notes asking for further details, is this organic or eat this soon, it expires in a week, my stomach growled again, interrupting my quest. Should I make us some breakfast or did you already eat? I asked him. I haven't eaten yet, but how about I cook for you? He asked, to which I couldn't say no. Okay, that sounds nice. I smiled, and I found myself taking this personally. Did he want to cook for me? Was I reading into this too far? Was he falling for me? I collected Priscilla's food out of the fridge. She'd been glued to Ford's ankles since we came back inside. Are you hungry, sweetie? I asked, to which she galloped over to her bowl and ate. What a ferocious little thing, Ford commented, as he took a mix out of the cupboard. Filling a pan with water, he began to boil it. Do you like Eggs Benedict? He asked, which was music to my ears. Like it? I love it. It's my favorite breakfast. He smiled and nodded. Mine too, he whispered. It was so faint that I almost didn't hear it. Sitting down at the table, I put a few more puzzle pieces together while I sipped on some hot coffee. Colors from the sunrise caught my attention, and soon I was glued to the picture window, watching the beautiful alpine glow of God's creation. Breakfast was whipped up fast. Within 10 minutes, I had 2 beautiful poached eggs on perfectly crisp English muffins coated with a heaping amount of hollandaise sauce. It can't be that fast! I mean, I guess if you make it a lot, then maybe. But I feel like Eggs Benedict would be a very time-consuming thing. But maybe he had hollandaise just, like, there waiting? I don't know. Maybe I'll look it up. I wonder how difficult it is, because I also love Eggs Benedict. Eggs Benedict that's my litmus test for breakfast places. If I go to a new breakfast place, I almost always will get an Eggs Benedict, because if their Eggs Benedict is good, I feel like everything else is good, because Eggs Benedict is more of a niche and like a little bit of a difficult dish, and there's multiple elements to it. And so if they do it really well, it's obviously delicious, but also the elements work well together and there's a good balance. And I feel like if they can do that well, then they can do other breakfasts well. But that's just a random thought. So would you like to join me in prayer? I asked, considering how yesterday I had sprung it on him without considering if he might. Ford gave a hesitant nod, and I reached my hand out to him, clasping his. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this blessing of food this morning, and for the beautiful heaps of snow that you have graced us with. May this food energize our bodies and keep us strong, and may you protect us from harm on the slopes. In your name, amen. Amen, Ford croaked out as we released each other's hands. As I took a bite of the food, I almost fell backward. This is the best Eggs Benedict I have ever had. I savored the bite, tasting the tangy sauce with the perfectly gooey egg. It was divine. Thanks. It was the only breakfast food I really know how to make from scratch, he shrugged. And you're doing it well, my friend. As we ate, I still felt the weight of his hand in mine. I was trying not to think about how rugged it felt in my soft, slender hands, or the strength that it gave off. No, I wouldn't daydream about this man's masculine attributes as I was sitting next to him. As I was staying with him in his chalet, as I was camped out in his bedroom while he took the couch. As if on cue, Priscilla, being the diva that she was, jumped up from the floor into Ford's lap while he was eating. The look of surprise on his face when she did that made me break into a gut-wrenching laugh. I'm so sorry. Clearly, I've enabled this behavior, I said as I got up to put her back on the floor. But Ford just shrugged. This has been a long time coming. I'm okay with it. He smiled and I started laughing again. The sight of this rugged, manly cowboy with my Shih Tzu wearing a pink sweater and pigtails sitting on his lap was all that my heart could handle. The joy was overwhelming as I finished my delicious meal, and we chatted about Priscilla. Lord, I can't help it. I've fallen for this man. Priscilla's inner monologue. Darling, I rather like this man we are accompanying this week. He has hands large enough to transport me and our luggage, which with my growing wardrobe, let's face it, it was a role that needed to be filled. I offered to clear the table while Ford went to get ready for his day. After taking her outside one more time, Priscilla found her favorite spot on the couch, in the blanket that Ford used for sleeping last night. It appeared I was not the only one with a huge crush on this man. As we both readied for skiing, he turned to look at me. Would you like to go skiing with me? My heart bounced at his words. I wanted to shout from the rooftops, proclaiming my answer. I felt like one of those old-timey showgirls who would do those synchronized kicks to the music. I felt like I could fly. Yes, I would. My answer was a little too eager, with both tone and volume. He looked at me like I about blew his hair back when I responded, but after a moment he smiled and nodded. Phew. We left the chalet and headed for the gondola. I had my skis over my shoulder on one arm and was carrying my ski poles in the other, but after I got to the sidewalk off his driveway, he stopped me. Here, give me the skis. You can carry the poles. His chivalry was refreshing. Come on, somebody, we love a gentleman. I obliged, watching him throw a set of skis over each shoulder and carry them effortlessly. As we got closer to the gondola line, skiers were being turned away. What's going on? I asked a skier who was walking the opposite direction of the gondola. The power is still out at the resort, too. The transformer blew, so now they are limiting the number of skiers because they can only run so many lifts. A look of concern came over my face as I hoped we would be let in. Clearly, this person wasn't, so I didn't get my hopes up. Thank you for the information, I said to the woman as we went our separate ways. What do you think we should do? I asked Ford, who was wearing his tiger mask again. Let's give it a try. Look at all these people turning away. Look at all of these people turning away, assuming they won't get in. By the time we make it through the line, we just might. And that's exactly what happened. The line moved quickly because people were giving up waiting for another gondola to come. Or for another gondola to move. Jeez. Okay, I'm going to start that over really quick. And that's exactly what happened. The line moved quickly because people were giving up waiting for another gondola to move. The resort was limiting skiers based on the type of lift ticket you had. Ford and I both had season passes, which according to today's rules weren't... Oh my gosh. Okay, sorry. That was weird. Okay. The resort was limiting skiers based on the type of lift ticket you had. Ford and I both had season passes, which, according to today's rules, weren't being able to ski. But with a quick flash of Ford's face, the man running the lift, he let us in the gondola. Not only that, but we were riding it alone. Gee, I said, the moment we were up in the air. It's so fun skiing with someone famous, I roused him, and he shrugged, taking his mask down for the first time since since we were alone. I know that was rather tacky of me, but I really wanted to ski with you today. His words brought more excitement to my heart than I cared to admit. Well, I did too, so thank you for revealing your identity. You can now go back to being the mysterious Tiger Man. I looked out the window, searching the snowy canyons below us for moose. Are you comfortable with blues and blacks? Ford asked, in reference to which ski runs I wanted to take. Yeah, pretty much anything that isn't moguls. My knees just hate moguls. Oh, and ice. That's hard to ski on, no matter what level of run. I also don't like it when it's super steep the whole way. A little steep is fine, maybe going into the run, but... I paused to consider my words to make sure I was describing it correctly. So yes, as long as the conditions are perfect, I am comfortable with intermediate to advanced runs. I smiled. I didn't like that I couldn't see his face and he could see mine. You know, if no one is up here, maybe you don't need to wear the mask. Just saying. I was thinking the same thing, he said, as he pulled it down, revealing his devastatingly handsome jawline. It somehow looked even better while he wore his ski goggles and helmet. That's better. Now I can see your face. And what a face it was. He looked like he was chiseled from stone. I didn't mean for the words to sound like they did, but I shrugged it off, remembering I promised the Lord I wouldn't cower from who I was. I was silly, goofy, and a little awkward sometimes, and that was okay. All the best people are. He smirked back at me. Ah, I love that. As the gondola slowed to let us out at the top, I jumped out, but somehow Ford still beat me to the skis. He grabbed both pairs and walked over to the starting point, setting mine down for me first. Quite the gentleman, which was a nice change from the men I'd been around in the last few years. I was forced to remind myself that Ford was not a man I was dating, but rather one who was probably just trying to keep the peace because we were forced to live together until further notice. Want to look at the map, or do you know your way around the mountain? I asked him. His goggles were down, and he expertly clipped into his skis in 2 seconds flat. I'm pretty familiar with things, but if you want to look, go ahead, he shrugged. I veered over to the map to the right, not entirely sure what I was looking for. There was no mountain host working today to give me a route, but I could just trust Ford to show me around and not be such a control freak. Was that even possible? Okay, I'll let you be the guide today. Where do you want to ski? I asked him. My favorite run when there is this much fresh powder is Great Big World. You'll love it. It skis right through a forest of trees and ends at a diner where they make really good hot chocolate. Ah, my favorite kind of skiing is when there are treats involved. I gleefully got my ski legs and followed him as we took off. It was clear from the moment he disembarked that he was the best skier I had ever seen. His body was able to lean at a 90-degree angle while he carved through the fresh powder and made turns without falling over. If I even attempted that, I'd have ended up in a full-body cast. Ford moved so fluidly, it looked like he wasn't outputting any energy whatsoever. Watching him inspired my own skiing as I started trying to improve my intermediate skills by following his tracks. After a few minutes, I was so out of breath I had to stop and rest my legs. "I'm sorry, this is amazing, but I don't usually work so hard at my turns," I said, embarrassingly winded. I sounded like I was fighting for my life as I choked the words out. I felt like it, too. "Yikes, I didn't mean to go so fast. I'll slow down." He winced, pulling up his goggles as he looked all around us for other people. "No, don't slow down. This is really good for me. Skill building. You can never stop improving. Once you do, you're dead." I was interrupted as Ford ambled toward me, pushing me out of the way and down on the ground, nearly falling on top of me. "Watch out!" a snowboarder yelled as he slid down the mountain right past us at lightning speed on his rear end. "Are you okay?" Ford asked, his face mere inches from mine. His lips were so kissable at this moment. I almost forgot I had a face full of snow. "Yes, I think so, thank you. Getting hit by a snowboarder was not on my bingo card today." Ford hesitated, his face still nearly touching mine, and I closed my eyes, my lips instinctively forming into a pout. Was he going to kiss me or leave me out in the cold? After a moment where nothing but snow was touching my lips, I opened my eyes again. Ford looked like he was closing in, ready to kiss me. Then, at the last second, he sat up, and I was reminded by the Lord that I had just asked him to protect my heart from getting hurt. So why now was I hoping to be kissed by this cowboy? Using his ski pole to launch himself to his skis, he reached out a hand to help me up. I took his gloved hand in mine as he easily lifted up to my feet, but my mind forgot I was on 2 wax skis, as each leg decided to go in a different direction. I let out a whimper while my legs tried to do the splits, but the only split I was worried about was in the back of my pants. "Yikes!" I hollered, grabbing onto Ford's broad shoulders to regain my stance. I put my legs back to where they should have been and let go of him. "I'm sorry, I lost my footing there for a second." He looked like he wanted to laugh, but didn't. "You, ready to go?" We'd only been skiing for a few minutes, and already I'd made a scene. "Giddy up," I said, to which he stared at me. I couldn't tell if his eyes were rolling since his goggles were reflecting back at me, but I'd have to put money on it that they were. I mean, let's go, cowboy. Ugh, so cringe. Sorry, I'm going back and highlighting when she said, "This is really good for me. Skill building. You can never stop improving. Once you do, you're dead." Okay, so cringe. Ford motioned for me to lead the way. "Ladies first." I appreciated that. I appreciated that, as it let me set the speed and tone for the day, but I felt like I was holding him up. So I started to push my limits and ski faster, which miraculously made my turns a little more effortless. Before I knew it, I was leaning into the angles like they were nothing, shredding through the snow almost as fast as Ford was earlier. At the end of the run, I came to a slow as the mountaintop cafe was in my sights. Top of the World Cafe was illuminated in large lettering above the floor-to-ceiling glass windows. I turned, grinning ear to ear, to see if Ford was excited as I was to get a hot chocolate, but he was nowhere to be found. "What the heck? Ford, where did you go?" I called out. A second later, I saw a skier in the distance coming off of a jump, made out of snow to the side. As he landed effortlessly in the snow, pillowy snow. Oh my gosh. As he landed effortlessly in the soft, pillowy snow, he was smiling back at me. "Sorry, I can never resist that little side run. It's short and mainly just the lead up to that jump, but it's my favorite." He was panting from the adrenaline of it all as we unclipped our skis. "You're a great skier, by the way," he said under his breath. "Thank you. That was probably the best I've ever skied. Turns out I just needed to pick up the pace of all of these years. Going behind you really got my butt in gear." He slid his tiger mask back up over his jawline, his mouth still exposed. His lips were almost begging me to kiss him. I thought to myself, "Ugh, Lord, please keep my feelings and my thoughts platonic and honoring." Excuse me. As we walked up to the cafe, I considered the current forced roommate situation. In the very least, if I couldn't fend off my feelings that were growing for this man by the second, let me at least keep my wits and dignity. The last thing I needed was another letdown. Every bone in my body was telling me to not date again, because every man I'd ever been involved with had hurt me in one way or another. And just recently, I had made the decision to swear off dating. But my heart yearned for love, to be a wife, to have children. In a world that glorified sin and all things that led to a life of unfulfillment, it was a tough spot to be in. "What would you like, Presley?" "My treat." Ford looked at me as I glanced at the menu. If they recognize you, do I get extra marshmallows? I asked, to which he cracked a smile. How about a vanilla mocha and a triple chocolate scone? He nodded. Or, actually, I'll get an apple cider with that pumpkin fritter right there. That glaze just looks heavenly, I said as I pointed at the dessert case, while my eyes darted to the over-the-top cupcake next to it. As the woman had her tongs out to grab the fritter, I stopped her. Wait! That one! The cupcake! And a peppermint tea, thank you. Ford chuckled. And I'll take a peppermint tea as well, thanks. He dropped a $20 bill on the counter. Want to go find us the right table? Figure it might take you a minute to pick the best one. I'll wait for our drinks. I picked up the cupcake and nodded, but I didn't know what he meant by that. I found a table immediately. The place was practically empty other than a few random ski patrollers. But the second I sat down, I noticed the table had an unfortunate wobble. Ford wasn't looking, so I quickly moved to another table before I realized that one had a really unflattering spotlight above it. Ford might not have been here on a date with me, but I didn't need him to see the micro peach fuzz that may have been all over my face. Finally, I settled on a table between the door and a heater, which worked out great for privacy if he had his back to it. Ford sat down a moment later, smiling and handing me my tea. What? I demanded, to which he broke out in a laugh. Nothing, I didn't say anything, he shrugged. So I like to find the best table. I'm living intentionally. It all matters, you know, I said, matter-of-factly. Where you sit matters, he asked. Well, it sure does. Our time is limited. For all I know, this could be my last day on Earth, and I want it to be right. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I don't want to waste it on a wobbly table that needs a few coasters squished under that third leg, or lighting that makes me look like a troll living under a bridge. His eyes widened. I mean that in a non-conceited way. Life is a gift. I want to enjoy it the best I can, is all. I took a bite of the indulgent cupcake with its double-tiered frosting. Ford laughed. What? You have a little frosting on your nose. He motioned to his own. I know. Maybe I'm saving that for later, I said, playing it cool before I wiped it off with a napkin from the holder on the table. You're different. His words dropped on the table like an anvil. How so? I asked, suddenly feeling very insecure in my own skin. I can't quite put my finger on that, Ford trailed off. Is it a bad thing? My words were like a whisper. No, definitely not in a bad way. I'd been told I was different before by men, all of whom didn't want another date with me. Honestly, this pattern was tiring. Was something seriously wrong with me? What if I didn't want to be different? Okay, I said back, losing my appetite for my cupcake. I only ate half of it, when I set it back down on its plate. I'm sorry, I've been told I don't communicate very well, he admitted. I nodded. That's apparent, I smiled, trying to smooth things over, and I've been told I'm overbearing, too much, annoying, I said sheepishly. Yet saying it out loud, I felt emotion bubbling up inside of me. I had a habit of oversharing, but this made me feel small, as a slideshow of hurtful comments in my memory took over my brain. Lord, I know these feelings are not coming from you. Please protect my mind from the one who is sending them. I'm sorry, people can be so mean. I've experienced it too. His words struck a chord in my heart. Was this quiet, brooding cowboy opening up to me? I wanted to do anything I could to keep it going. Really? Tell me about that. Okay, maybe that wasn't it. Was I writing a book? Interviewing him for a late-night talk show? Ford shrugged. When my ex and I broke up, half of my friends stopped communicating with me. People I'd known for years. They kind of took her side, so to speak, before they even knew that she left me for another man. I nodded, knowing how hurtful that must have been. And growing up, I was treated as though I was a burden. It's not something that you can just get over that easily. I was blown away by the revelation from Ford. Exactly. It's more challenging to forgive people who make you feel small. Boy, do I understand that. But it's also the most freeing form of forgiveness that there is, to forgive and forget, to leave those hurts in a rearview mirror. We sat in silence for a few minutes as Ford looked reflective, taking sips of his tea, and eventually downing the rest of it. I had gulped mine down minutes ago. Want to get back to the slopes? Sure, I said, mildly disappointed that our conversation was ending, but hoping we could pick things back up later. It took all of my strength to wobble over to the door in my stiff ski boots. You never realize how much you use your ankles to walk normally until they are frozen in place by a thick, unbendable plastic. But once said plastic is clipped into metal sticks traversing on ice, you are suddenly thankful for the lack of bendability. We spent the rest of the afternoon shredding through the heavy first-class powder. Ford said it was the best snow in the world because it was a heavy, dry snow. All of that went over my head as I wasn't a meteorologist, but having grown up in Denver and skiing all around the states, I agreed that these were some supreme conditions. Each time we got on a chairlift or inside a gondola, Ford would stiffen up, worried that someone would be waiting in the wings at the top, or would recognize him from one of the many passing chairs going by. I didn't think these fears were irrational, and he certainly didn't voice them, but rather, I felt in tune with him. I picked up on things more than the average person, which was another reason why most men found me annoying to be around. Normally, when I thought of such things, thoughts planted by the devil perhaps, I would fall into a spiral of dwelling. How I was not good enough, how I had failed, how I needed to work on myself or change completely. But just then, I felt as though the mouth of the Lord was speaking into my mind. Those you've met were not good enough for you. Wow. Wow, I love that. But just then, I felt as though the mouth of the Lord was speaking into my mind. Those you've met were not good enough for you. I didn't deserve that treatment from them. I was barking up the wrong tree for men to begin with because they didn't deserve me. What a freedom it was to find peace in the Lord. As we sat in silence in the chairlift, and God was working out my biggest hang-ups in life in my heart, my attention turned back to Ford. At first, I thought he was just a brooding, grumpy cowboy living in a fancy ski town. Spending time with him the last few days, I had found his demeanor starting to soften. He certainly had much more going on that met the eye. What was that phrase? A still water that runs deep? Ooh, I love that. See, this is so interesting because I feel like these characters, I feel like remind me very much of me and my boyfriend, which is fun. Spending time with him the last few days, I had found his demeanor starting to soften. He certainly had much more going on than met the eye. What was that phrase? A still water that runs deep? Just because he wasn't speaking so much that he was constantly blaring his words didn't mean he was not thinking or feeling. There was more to Ford than met the eye. But what did meet the eye was unbelievably handsome. He was drop-dead gorgeous. The Winter Games were just a day away, and then my trip was coming to an end. Power could have been restored to my chalet at any moment, and roads would have been reopened. Would I have been able to peel back the proverbial onion of Ford before I left Sage Mountain? Chapter 8. Ford. Short snowman, long story. The Lord sent Presley to me because he'd been trying to reach me in other ways and I wasn't getting the messages. That was the only explanation for how someone could speak the language of my heart so naturally. When Presley brought up forgiveness today, it was all I could do to stay seated, as I nearly toppled over when another weight was lifted from me, one that I had been carrying for so long, the entirety of my life. I wanted to forgive those who had hurt me. Oh Lord, now I see that even the hurt was a gift, as every hardship is, because through our pain we find you. I'd really enjoyed my day with Presley. She was outgoing in almost a strange way. I didn't mean that negatively. It was just foreign in today's day and age that someone would be so open and honest without fear. Presley had no hidden agenda or tricks up her sleeve. And we did share a moment, one that I had to try very hard to remember the boundaries I had asked God to instill in me, the respect I wanted to show this woman. In another life, I would have wanted to kiss her. Heck, in this life, I wanted to kiss her. I still very much did, but that was something that I didn't want to cheapen. If it were to happen, I wanted everything to be out in the open and that it would be a clear, God-ordained relationship. I was done with empty relationships that had no foundation, no promise, and were full of secrets and lies. The girl also knew her way around a ski hill, which admittedly I found very charming. As we walked back to the chalet late afternoon, I found myself laughing hard for the first time in ages as she recounted the split she did when I knocked her out of the way from that snowboarder. Presley was so animated and entertaining. I found myself looking forward to seeing Priscilla, too. Still, I couldn't think of her name without smirking. When we reached the chalet, the snow was blowing off the roof like puffs of smoke. The wind was picking... Sorry. I think the pollen in the air is giving me a little bit of congestion, and for some reason, it only comes out when I'm reading out loud. Okay. When we reached the chalet, the snow was blowing off the roof like puffs of smoke. The wind was picking up, which could have meant some major drifts tonight. As Presley went on about how much fun she had, I set the skis down outside in a snowy bump reserved just for that. She poked the holes into the mound, and we both went to the door. As Priscilla greeted us as if we'd been away for 40 days, Presley took her outside to do her business, and I found myself watching and reflecting on the day and the kind of woman that Presley was. Poppy didn't know how to ski, which was never a problem for me, of course, but her lack of willingness to try did upset me from time to time in our very short-lived romance. I tried my best to immerse myself into her hobbies and interests. Why didn't she want to do that with me? A very important part of intimacy for a relationship is being willing to try new things and being willing to partake in the other person's hobbies, because it always brings you closer. Looking back, Poppy's interests were mostly attending galas for various foundations that bigwigs attended and shopping for those outfits. I knew this because it was my credit card coming to the rescue more than once on those shopping trips. In retrospect, Poppy likely met her now husband at one of those events, the only one I could recall us all being in the same room, being in the same room with was the The only one I could recall us all being in the same room with was the fundraiser for the Sage Mountain Charitable Foundation. I closed my eyes and thought back to it. I thought they were raising funds to create and maintain a trail system for cross-country skiers. It was something extra for the community, a way to give back and help those who didn't use the ski mountain recreate. Okay. I personally enjoyed cross-country skiing, so I had asked Poppy if she wanted to attend with me. It was at this function that Trent Langley had been in attendance, and now that I really focused on the memories, I did recall that Poppy had been chatting with him at the champagne bar. Poppy was fantastically good-looking in a high-maintenance sort of way. She wasn't the type of woman who could just roll out of bed, brush her teeth, and head out for the day. No, Poppy needed a team of people working on her skincare, her bronze glow, her nails and feet, and her clothing. Poppy's hair was another story. She went to a stylist who flew in once a month from Milan. Her blonde hair and extensions didn't let her just jump into a pool or be out in the rain. Her look was curated. It wasn't a bad thing to me then, and it wasn't now. But when I compared her to Presley, whom I admitted that I did not know her beauty routine, it seemed like a stark comparison. Presley was more of a natural beauty. I'd seen her both wearing a little makeup and none. She looked great either way. Her hair was soft and in her natural color. We got snowed on during our ski day together, and it wasn't a bother to her or a big deal at all. Poppy and Presley couldn't be more different, but the last few women I had dated were very much like Poppy. Wrong for me. I couldn't put my finger on why that was, but I knew it had everything to do with God and my not waiting for the woman that he would send me. Despite it all, I did want a woman who I could take care of, who would let me pay the bill at the restaurant and fill that traditional role of a wife. I didn't care if she worked and the housework could be done by a paid cleaning service, but my dream for my life was to have a woman who was present, not overwhelmed by the burdens that came from keeping a household, job, and children in line. I wanted a partnership, someone whom I could do all of these things with, instead of a one-way thing on either of us. Sigh. Today, when Presley sat across from me with frosting on her nose, I was taken aback by her willingness to share with me about her past hurts. People had not treated her as they should have, and I found myself relating to it. But what really got me was when she told me that someone told her she was annoying. That stung for deeper reasons. Growing up, feeling like I wasn't always wanted or a burden to my parents, my fear every time I spoke was that I was being annoying. So I created a pattern that I didn't allow myself to voice my feelings, or, as Presley alluded to take up space. It hurt me later in my adult relationships because without ever verbalizing who I was or what I wanted, I didn't know that I'd ever been loved for who I was either. Wow. That's so good. I love this too because they both had the fear of being annoying, but for very different reasons. Because she's obviously open with everything, but he was very close with everything because he was afraid of being annoying. So, and I think that's very true of just real life, is people can have the same root hurt, whether it's fear of being annoying or fear of being too much or whatever it may be, but it can come from very different places. And I think that's important to remember because it reminds you not to be judgmental of things. And it also helps you validate what other people have gone through because you can feel the same thing, but for a different reason. And that doesn't, just because it's a different reason doesn't mean it's any less valid. Presley brought her little fluffy dog back inside as she held her in the crook of her arm. Someone is over the snow, she said, giggling. Priscilla had snow all the way up to her chest from the looks of it. Her little boots and the bottom of her jacket were covered in the white stuff. They went into the mudroom right off the front door, where Presley kept a towel on top of the bench to wipe her down. At some point during this day, it appeared she had also brought in a blow-dryer, as she was now using that to warm the dog back up. I couldn't hold back my laughter this time. I'd never seen a dog enjoy that so much. My mind thought of dogs out a car window, but they had their mouths open and tongues out. This dog had her eyes closed, mouth closed, as if she could, and if she could have purred like a cat, I imagine she would have been, as Presley was taking each one of the dog's paws one by one and making sure everything was entirely dry. She's a spoiled Victorian child in a dog suit, Presley laughed, turning off the blow-dryer. Ready for a snacky? She asked Priscilla in a high-pitched voice. The dog went wild. I didn't know if it was for the incoming treat or because of the mild dampness that she felt somewhere on her fur, but she started tearing around the chalet in her bright pink sweater. After getting a treat, she rounded the coffee table several times before coming to me and jumping up on my legs, prompting me to pick her up. I gave in immediately. Once in my arms, Priscilla became calm and started licking her hand. Presley politely asked about doing a load of laundry, to which I quickly obliged. There's a basket in that cupboard right there, I pointed with my free arm, but when I went to open it, she shooed me away. I got it, thank you. You just entertained Priscilla for me. Looking down at Priscilla, who had 2 bows in her hair from this morning, perfectly done still, let me know she'd been sleeping all day and was likely still full of energy. I set her on the floor and squeaked one of her toys, and she went wild again. Do you want to order pizza? I asked Presley, who had just finished loading her laundry. After that, I gotta go take care of the horses. Her eyes lit up. Yes to both, she said. I would love a cheese pizza with extra olives and to meet your horses. I smiled. It's settled then, I said, reaching for the phone I kept forgetting was broken. Can I, use your phone? Mine is still out of order, I said, embarrassed. Of course, let me go get it, she said, slipping out of the room and returning quickly, staring at added as she walked, "Sorry, I had a lot of notifications. Here you go." She handed it to me, looking away. I dialed the pizza place by memory, one of the only numbers I could remember since it spelled out PZZA at the end of the common prefix. After ordering Presley's choice and another one topped high with meat for me, I added on a dessert. Why not? I could have used the extra calories for the Winter Games. A feeling of dread washed over me. The games were almost here. Was this really the end of my career? It was both a freeing and paralyzing thought to imagine this being the last competition I went through. Sure, I could have come back after a long-winded break, but I took a break every year for summer, and I still felt like that hadn't been enough. Besides, in 5 or even 10 years after a sabbatical, would my knees allow my body to do the jumps it did now? I couldn't see that happening. These were the years that I could compete, when I was still young enough to have the cartilage and agility to do so. If I was done, I was done. I hung up the call and found myself lingering on the thought of retirement once again. It had been captive in my mind since my father had passed away, for I was too busy competing to stop and be by his side, though I wasn't given much notice to do so, which I had realized was another thing I was hurt over. I thought of the fact that God wanted to help direct my path. No, that was not it. He wanted me to follow his path. God, I'll be obedient to you. I feel the desire to quit ski joring. Just tell me what I need to do. Presley returned from the laundry room, bringing me back the present moment. Here's your phone. They said 30 minutes. I think we have enough time to get to the horses and back if you're really up for it, I asked, picking up on a change in her vibe. Sure, I'd love to, she said. I nodded, not reading into her demeanor, and we walked to the truck outside. I opened the door for her, and she used both the door bar and the running board to climb in. Sorry, I need a huge vehicle for towing trailers, but I know it's a real pain to get into with sore legs from skiing. You got that right. I don't think my legs have ever felt wobblier than they do right now. Totally worth it, though. She smiled and shut the door. I walked around and climbed into the driver's side, turning the ignition. We sat in silence on the short few-minute drive to the horse stables. When we arrived, Presley cleared the air. On my phone, when I looked at it, there were all sorts of news stories about the Winter Games and how some competitors are cheating. Lots of allegations about riders being bribed to be throwing races in. She trailed off, but she didn't need to say any more. I already knew it all. Unfortunately, there have been some bad decisions made as of late for some of my competitors, but know that I am not one of them, and you have my word I would never do that. I actually have my manager looking into proposing safeguards to prevent it from happening. She seemed satisfied with this answer, but despite dodging questions on the matter for months, I realized I wasn't done talking about it. So I told her everything, about the allegations made against some in the sport, and that included several people I knew and had competed against, who were, what? Okay, I think that one was an actual typo, because it says, are now facing disqualification. The doing of which may have had me win some categories by default, which did not sit right with me. Thank you for sharing that with me. I'm wondering if your winning streak is what spurred this cheating scandal. They just can't seem to win against you otherwise. Presley trailed off. I'm certainly not guaranteed to win. God has brought me this far, but I'm due any day for a humbling. My words felt foreign coming out of my mouth as I admitted that God was the reason for my current success, and despite my joke, I feared losing, not for how it would make me look, but rather for how it would make me feel. Was this where my deep, overwhelming pull to retire, while I was still good at the sport, came from? My fear of losing? God will get you through it. If he wants you to win, you will. And that goes for everything in life. If we get a job, if we marry, all of our days are written in his book. So no need to fret about it, right? Presley's words hit me right where I needed to hear them. I thanked her. We got out of the truck and Presley ran to the stables. The air was frigid, the horses were eager for carrots. I started pulling out the bag of plump, brightly colored heirloom carrots, and they ran to me, leaving Presley in the background. Hey, I may not have carrots, but I have quite a bit of love to give over here, she proclaimed to the horses, who didn't look back. Here, take these. They will be your best friends in no time, I said as I handed her the remainder of the bag. She giggled joyfully, and she doled them out between the group, while I shoveled in a few pitchforks worth of hay for each horse. Which horse will be with you in the Winter Games? She asked. Buckshot. That one, there on the right. I pointed to the towering animal. What a beautiful group of animals. I've always wanted to learn how to ride horses. Maybe I'll take riding lessons this summer. There's a ranch not too far from Denver that offers them. I wanted so badly to say that I could teach her to ride, that she could take her pick from mine, throw on a saddle, and we could ride right now, but it was frigid cold, way too much snow, and I didn't know if I'd ever see her again after this week. Yet right now, all I could think of was ways that we could make that happen. God, I feel something brewing inside of my heart for this woman. Do you want to make a snowman? Presley asked me, and my eyes squinted together. Right now? I asked in disbelief. Oh, come on, it's not that cold. Plus, we still have one carrot, so he already has his nose. I watched in awe as Presley immediately got to work on the snowman next to the horse stable, while I had no other options but to join her. In seconds, I was laughing harder than I had in years, possibly ever, as I watched Presley try to roll a large snowball for the body of the snowman. The snow was past her knees, and she had to lift her legs up so high so they could just... And she had to lift her legs up as high as they could go just to wade through it. I joined in her effort, and together we had the first piece done in just a few minutes. Boy, that was quite a workout. I don't know if I have it in me to create 2 more giant snowballs for this guy. He might just be really short. You're really short, you know that? I asked her as I peered over at her. I was bent down trying to secure the base for her snowman project when I felt a cold rush of wet hit the side of my face. She hit me with a snowball. Ha! How's Shorty now? Pretty strong, eh? If I hadn't been so stunned, I may not have retaliated with a snowball of my own. Soon, we were in a full-blown war. The last snowball was thrown by Presley, and it partially went into my mouth. I crunched the snow and smiled. Yellow snow, I joked, as this was the fresh powder that had just fallen, and my horse hadn't yet peed anywhere near it. Sick, she called out, laughing hysterically. You're silly when you want to be, she said. I took that as a compliment. Okay, come finish this sad little snowman before our dinner arrives, I said. Together, we quickly packed together one larger mass of snow for this head. Presley poked 2 holes for his eyes and stabbed it with the carrot for his nose. It ain't perfect, but it'll do, she said. Buckshot, knowing the sound of the crinkling bag that held his carrots, poked his head out of the barn doors. He spotted the carrot and quickly came over to pluck it out with his teeth. And there it is, I said, laughing. It was nice knowing you, Snowman. Well, we better get back to those pizzas. Unless you think Priscilla can sign for them? Presley laughed at my joke. Yeah, I'm starving. That half cupcake for lunch did not go as far as I needed it to. She threw her hands up in the air to show the horses she was out of carrots. Better show them your pockets are empty too, or else they will be coming for them. They know all my tricks, I said. Presley immediately pulled out her coat pockets, showing her hands like a blackjack dealer. Okay, I think we're good here. We're all friends now. I had a talk with Buckshot, and he's going to be the best he can be on Saturday, she beamed. Is that so? I asked. He seems like a very sweet soul. I wondered just how she picked up on the truth like that so quickly. They were all sweethearts, but Buckshot was in fact my best-mannered horse out of all of them. As Presley walked back to my truck, I put away my pitchfork and dimmed the lights for the horses, closing the barn door. Every bone in my body wanted to make sure I opened the door for her, but by the time I made it over, she was already inside. I took a beat to see the outline of a beautiful woman riding in the passenger seat of my truck, and I knew that I was ready for love, and I prayed this was the woman whom God was sending for me. Back at the chalet, wow, I feel like that was such an anticlimactic, oh my gosh, I'm in love with her. And maybe it was just my reading of it, but I'm gonna read that paragraph again. As Presley walked back to my truck, I put away my pitchfork and dimmed the lights for the horses, closing the barn. Every bone in my body wanted to make sure I opened the door for her, but by the time I made it over, she was already inside. I took a beat to see the outline of a beautiful woman riding in the passenger seat of my truck, and I knew that I was ready for love, and I prayed this was the woman whom God was sending me. Back at the chalet, we made it just in time for the delivery to arrive. A delivery car pulled up right as we were walking inside. Ford, the man called out. Guilty, I said, as he shuffled his pizza boxes to shake my hand. Been a long time, Ben. How's that beautiful family of yours? I asked. He nodded and smiled. They are fantastic. You know, my little man John wants to get into ski joring just like you. Every time he sees you on the television, he's just enamored with how cool it is. When I saw your order came through, I knew I had to deliver it just so I could tell you that. A feeling caught on in my heart, followed by the realization that I would love to teach youth the sport. Was this something that was in my future? Oh, I love that. You tell John that he can come practice with me whenever Dad says he's old enough. Of course, you can ad-lib my words as need be. I smirked. Thanks, Ben. Hope business is doing well for you. I gave him cash and a generous tip and took the boxes in exchange. Business is good. The only thing that would make it better is if the town could fix this power issue. We can only run one of our pizza ovens on our generator. He shrugged but thanked me and went for his car. You hear any updates on that? I've been a little out of the loop, I asked. Nothing much, but they're hoping to get it repaired by the weekend. All will be lost if they aren't back up to full capacity at the ski resort for the folks coming in for the winter games. Ben turned and looked past me to see Presley's silhouette in the window. I'm happy for you, Ford. Good luck this weekend. John and I will be cheering you on. I considered telling John that Presley was just my neighbor and I was putting her up, but instead, I relished in the good feelings of having the appearance of a relationship. John was a good friend of mine before Poppy. That relationship had been an isolating one in many ways. After our demise, sorry, I was confused for a second. Good luck this weekend. John and I will be cheering you on. Okay. Okay, yeah, that's his son. Okay, wait, what? Because earlier it says his little man John, so that's his son. And then he says, good luck this weekend. John and I will be cheering you on. Okay, I think this might just be an error because he's talking to Ben, but then I think he calls him John. So I think he means Ben. I considered telling Ben that Presley was just my neighbor and I was putting her up, but instead, I relished in the good feelings of having the appearance of a relationship. Ben was a good friend of mine before Poppy. That relationship had been an isolating one in many ways. After our demise, I fell off the face of the earth. Seeing Ben made me realize I was ready to make up for lost time. Thanks, buddy. It was nice catching up. See you around, I called out, heading inside before the pizza gets cold. Who is ready to eat? I hollered out. Priscilla ran to greet me as if the food was for her, or perhaps she was used to getting a few table scraps at home. I smirked at the thought. It smells amazing, Presley said, as she quickly set the table with plates and napkins. A bottle of ranch dressing was sitting in the center, along with a container of Parmesan cheese that she must have brought with her. I set the boxes down on the table and pulled up a chair. The owner of the place is a buddy of mine. He makes the best pizza on this side of Italy, I said. So you've been to Italy? Presley's eyes widened as she sat down across from me, taking in our conversation. Oh yeah, I was invited there once to ski tour. They have a pretty big following for it in Switzerland, and they had an Italian group who wanted to host it at the base of the Dolomites. I was only there for a weekend. Can't say I took in any of the sights. The painful memory of my father passing away while I was there came rushing back. But I did have a pizza, and the experience was life-changing. This pizza is almost just as good, I laughed, wanting nothing more than to grab a slice of pizza. But I found myself waiting for Presley to pray before we ate. After a moment, she closed her eyes and clasped her hands, and I followed suit. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this food we are about to eat. May Ford and I continue to learn more facts about each other, and may we draw closer to you every minute of the day. Amen. Amen, I croaked out. Taking a sip of the water that Presley had poured for me, I watched her pick the largest piece out of the box that was hers with a childlike awe. This is going to be so good, she said, as she drizzled a heaping pile of ranch dressing on her plate and sprinkled the pizza with fresh Parmesan. Watching her ready the slice that I was certain she was starving for showed patience that I'd never known myself, as I was already halfway through my first slice by the time she took a bite. The pizza was fantastic, as usual, but the company made it even better. I could get used to this. Well, I asked as she chewed the bite. You were right. This is good pizza. Not that I've ever been to Italy to compare. That's actually my dream destination. Really? You should go. It's supposed to be amazing in the summer, I said dryly. I had nothing real to add to this conversation, since I'd only been there for 48 hours in the middle of winter. One day, she said, taking another bite and chewing it slowly before setting it down. Ever since I was in my teens, I always imagined getting married there. A romantic elopement, just me and my groom on the shores of the Amalfi Coast. The sea breeze is blowing in our hair, and I'm wearing a dress I bought off the rack. As she shared her dreams with me, I felt a new connection with her. Presley was so honest, confident, real. We'd spent the same amount of time with one another, and I was still struggling to open up, and here she was, spilling out the deepest desires of her heart without another thought. I was beginning to feel that I knew Presley more in the last few days we'd spent together than I ever had known Poppy in our relationship that led to an engagement that led to her leaving me. It was then I realized that God had freed me from the shame of my past transgressions, but I was in the habit of bringing them back to light at every opportunity to do so. I needed to believe in God's forgiveness and release these hurts. To do so, I needed to forgive Poppy. I needed to forgive my parents, to forgive those who had hurt me. I could finally be free. Oh, so good. So true. A knock at the door made us jump. I'll get it, I said, standing stiffly. Who could it be? I traipsed to the door and opened it. A local delivery driver was holding a package. Ford Prescott, I have a package for you to sign for. He held out a handhold device for me to sign on. I thought the roads were still closed. How can packages be coming in? I asked. This one was flown in, sir. The airport is still open. Thank you. He spun on his heels and left. The small box was marked overnight air, and it was said it was from Jack, my manager. I think I have a phone again, I said as I tore into the package. A brand new smartphone with a heavy-duty shatterproof case was inside. A sticky note on the phone said it was already charged. I just needed to turn it on and log into my cloud account. My managers thought of everything. I don't think a bullet could break this casing, I mused. I did as the note said, and then I set the phone on the counter, returning to my meal with Presley. Her dog was lapping up the remains of her fancy dog food that took up more space in my refrigerator than my own. Where were we? I asked, in an effort to return to our conversation about Italy. I found myself longing for the peaceful picture she painted with her words about her dream wedding day, and deep down, I liked that she was a traditional woman who wanted marriage. Oh, the wedding that I'll never have, she said, shattering my previous thoughts. What do you mean? You don't think you'll get married? I asked, a cautious tone to my voice. I don't know. I'm almost 26, and I haven't had more than the fleeting first date. For some reason, I repel men. Isn't that right, Priscilla? Presley picked her dog up and gave her a bit of the pizza crust. But that's okay. It's all in God's plan. I trust him. I really do. Yes, I would love nothing more than to be a wife to a godly man. However, those seem to be a few and far between these days. At that moment, I felt like she was speaking directly to me, like she could see right through me, to my past. All it took was an internet search to learn everything there was to know about me. Presley's words struck me, and I slipped into prayer again. Lord, I pray that Presley finds the right man for her who fulfills these desires of a godly husband, because I don't know that could ever be me. I fall so short of that. In the last 24 hours, I'd prayed more than I had in the last 24 years. Funny how that worked. I wish I could have told Presley that her influence had started to change the man I was. Oh, that's so cute. Oof. Anyway, enough of the self-pity. Do you want to watch a movie tonight? Part of my ski trip traditions is to watch a 1980s ski flick, unless you have an early morning, and you are sleeping on the couch, so I don't want to be keeping you up. She trailed off, talking herself out of it. I'd like that, and I have just the movie in mind. I pulled out a favorite from my childhood. It was a movie that involved skiing with a mystery about a pair of missing skis and poles. The person who had them taken had to go down the ski hill on his rear end in order to get to the bottom. Very silly premise, but enjoyable and light. During the movie, I found myself watching Presley see it for the first time. Her laughter, perfectly timed to the best parts, rang through the house. She peppered me with endless questions about the actors, about the filming location, but her passion for living in the moment was contagious. I found myself retrieving my phone so I could look up some of these answers myself, when I saw I had several missed calls from my manager. Apparently, the phone had been powered on, but the volume had been on silent. As it should be. I wish I could have gone back to ignorance of the calls and returned to the movie with Presley, but with the Winter Games being tomorrow, I really had better see what was happening. Excuse me for a moment, I have to call my manager. Want me to pause it? Presley asked Priscilla in her lap as she started looking around for the remote. No, don't bother. I've seen this so many times that I know exactly what I will miss, I said, walking into my office and closing the door so I wouldn't disturb her movie. Jack answered on the first ring. I hear you've been shacking up with a woman. Is that why I haven't been able to reach you? The tone in his voice sounded very judgmental. You got it all wrong. It's not like that. But who told you that anyway? I asked. Billy, the delivery guy. I had him personally call me to tell me that the phone had been delivered. You don't even want to know what I had to pay to get that thing flown in. I groaned, knowing full well the bill would be passed on to me. The freedom of not having my phone had been so nice, I regretted that I had even signed for it now. Well, like I said, she's just my neighbor. Anyway, what's up? You don't usually call me this late unless something is happening. I pressed, wanting to take this conversation forward so I could get back to Presley. Tomorrow is the Winter Games. Are you ready? He asked, his voice still hinting at annoyance. Define ready, I smirked. Jack was silent. Yeah, I'm prepared. I just have an ill feeling about this cheating scandal and what it will mean for my competition. If someone wins, I want them to win because they are the best, not because someone threw the race, I said. Well, in that case, I have good news for you. The Ski Touring Association has agreed to wipe the slate clean for those who have been suspected or accused of throwing races, but every single race is going to be monitored much, much closer with a full auditing team in place. I was relieved to hear that. That's great news. With these new parameters put in place, we can move on to a new generation of rules for the sport. I felt overjoyed at the defined parameters. I was blatantly against cheating of any kind. It did not belong anywhere in sports. But now we had formal rules against it and steps to ensure it didn't happen. So, is your neighbor pretty? Jack's voice relaxed. I rolled my eyes. He'd always paid extra special attention to the ladies, as he was a lifelong bachelor who'd never been able to find the right one. If you must know, her name is Presley. She's just... I paused, trying to find the right words to describe this incredible woman. A lot... Jack cut me off. Oops, sorry, Ford, I'm getting another call. See you tomorrow. Jack hung up. Okay, bye, I said to the blank phone. I didn't get to finish my sentence. I wanted to tell him that she was a lot different than anyone I'd ever met before. She was a godly woman, which was so refreshing, and she took extra care to ensure she lived intentionally in every way. As I reflected on these facts, I realized I was past the point of falling for her. I was in my feelings, deep. I considered my heart. Was this a relationship from God? Saying a quick prayer about it, I realized just the fact that I was praying right now again was the biggest sign that it could be. This woman brought my hardened heart out of the pits of darkness, where I had been hiding from God, and back to the arms of Him. For a moment, I thought about bursting through the office door and telling her how I felt. I wondered what she would say. Would my feelings be reciprocated? Instantly, I changed my mind. This was something that I wouldn't do lightly. I had to know for certain that this was the woman that God wanted me to be with before I said or did anything about it. Okay. I think I'm going to stop there. I'm now on chapter 9, and I am 74% of the way through. So I read about 28% because I was at 36 before. So I think it'll only take me one more stream to finish that one. So that's exciting. I also need to figure out what I'm going to read next because I haven't heard back from any of the other authors that I've DM'd on Instagram. So I'll have to reach back out to some people and see if they would let me read their books out loud. If not, I'll just go back to reading quietly, but I've really been enjoying reading out loud, so hopefully I can get a couple more people to let me read out loud, but yeah, as always, if you guys want to follow me on my social medias and stuff, everything is Time to Laugh 34. My Instagram has a period before the number, but everything is Time to Laugh 34. So I've got my Substack where I write articles and things. I have my YouTube channel, which I am posting And I'm working on making them a little bit more formal and like having descriptions in the videos and everything. But I'm posting the full versions of these ones where I'm reading out loud to my YouTube. And then for my other ones where I was reading silently, I'm editing them down into just like when I'm talking or reacting to things. So it's just basically the highlights of those Twitch streams. So I post all of those on my YouTube if you guys want to go subscribe to that. And then my Instagram, timetolaugh.34, that's kind of my home base for everything. So I'll post links and everything to those. So if you guys want to follow me on those other places, feel free. Feel free to send me a message, ask me questions, anything like that. Always open to recommendations for books or authors to reach out to. And yeah, hope you guys have an amazing week, and I will see you guys next Monday. Bye.